All right, and welcome back everyone to our next NurreFX basic lesson on chart setup. Once you learn the basics of Forex trading, which is pip values, margin, and whatnot, you know, we have to go through the basic order entry, but how do we do our analysis in the markets? Most traders are going to use what we call technical analysis, which we look at both here at NurreFX, which are called technical analysis and fundamental analysis. However, technicals is done using your charts on the MetaTrader platform or whichever platform in which you choose. What I'm going to do here is as we get a little bit deeper into technical analysis, we'll show you how a little bit more of how you add different parameters to your charts, like different indicators or different types of trend lines or Fibonacci levels. That'll all be done once we start going through more on technical analysis. Today, I just want to show you, which I don't think people do enough of just how to set up just a basic view on your charts, how to set up your chart properties, and then also how to create just a basic view of the market. Just a very simple 1-2 lesson on how to establish very simple charts for doing your analysis in the Forex markets. So let's first go to changing chart properties. And that should be enough of what we need there on the Word document. When you first open up your MetaTrader platform, you'll probably have different charts showing up on your screen. What I always tell my students to do is just kind of X out of all of the charts and start from what we call a clean slate, if you will, the gray area, which is where a lot of trading is done. Now, the first thing I want to do here is go through how to step one, how to pull all your charts over and put them on the screen, and then how to change the properties on those charts and create a template to where you have a nice little view of the market based on based on doing what we call comparison analysis in which to start your trading day. So before we do this, let me just ask a question. When you're looking, if you want to know how stocks are doing, like the broader stock market, do you generally look at just one stock to see how the stock market is doing? You do not. The same applies to the currency market. If you want to know how the dollar, let's say, is doing in an individual day, you wouldn't just look at one chart on the dollar. You'd probably want to get a view of how the dollar is trading against all the currency pairs in which to do your analysis of, is the dollar strong today? Is the dollar weak? You wouldn't just pull up a chart on the euro dollar in which to do that. You would pull up a chart on how the dollar's trading against the euro, the pound, the Swiss, the yen, the Aussie, New Zealand, the Canadian, to get a broader view of, I want to see how the dollar's been performing for, let's say, the past week. So the first thing we would do is we'd want to pull up, out of all the currency pairs that we trade, we'd want to pull our 7 pairs over, which would be the euro dollar, the pound dollar, dollar Swiss, dollar yen, Aussie, New Zealand, Canadian. So what we want to do is we'd say, okay, well, let's pull all these charts over onto our screen so that we can look at them all at one time. So what I'll do here is I'll take the euro dollar, I'm going to left click, and I'm going to drag it onto this gray screen. And that'll pull my euro dollar chart up. And then I'll go over here to pound dollar, and I'll drag it, and I'll left click, I'll drag, I'll keep my left click held down, and then let go of it on the gray area. So now I have euro dollar and pound dollar. Then I'll take dollar Swiss, drag it over into the gray area, and that'll pull up my dollar Swiss chart. Same thing with dollar yen, same thing with Aussie dollar, same thing with New Zealand dollar, and same thing for dollar Canadian. So essentially I've pulled up all 7 of these charts, and now I have them all on one screen. Can we see all these charts at one time, though, is the question. No, we cannot. What we want to do when we create a view, and what I'll do is I'll X out of this market watch over in here so that we have just the charts. I just clicked on the X, and that took my market watch down, which is the quote screen. You can bring that back just by clicking on the view or clicking this button right in here where it says market watch. So now this is a jumbled mess. I want to look at all these dollar pairs all on the same screen. So what I'm going to do up here is I'm going to go under window, and I'm going to just click, you see here where it says tile windows? I'm going to click on that. and that'll pull up all of my pairs together. So not only do I just have all the charts one at a time, I can see them all at the same time in this case. The one other thing that I like to show people though is I'm not a big fan of, a lot of people love black backgrounds on their charts. I'm not a big fan of it. It kind of hurts my eyes for some reason, is how to customize your properties to make the charts more visibly stimulating to you, if you will, to where they, to where it gets you to the right point at which they don't hurt your eyes, if you will. You can choose any one of these charts and you can go on here and just right click. And what I'm going to do on this chart under, let's say, euro dollar, is I'm going to go down here to properties, which you can also get by pressing PF8 on your platform when you're on a chart. Now, for me personally, I don't like the black background right in through here. I can change all my chart colors here. So I'm going to change this from black to white. And you see it changes that and shifts it over. The foreground, I don't want it to be, I want to be able to see my numbers. I'm going to make that black. And see, that's the better view of how I like to see my charts. And everybody's different in their chart colors, if you will. Now under grid, you see, some people like these little grid lines that go left and right on the chart. I'm not a huge fan of them. Some people really like having those on the charts. I personally do not. So I don't like to see that little grayscale, that little grid on there. So under grid, what I'll do is I'll click none, and you'll see that gets rid of the grid. Now you have your three different types of charts: your bar charts, your candlestick charts, and your line charts that most MetaTrader platforms offer. What I like to see is on my up bars, my bars that are up bars, meaning the bars close higher than where they opened, is I like those to be green because that's showing the price closing at a price higher than where it opened. For any bars that are down, I like to make those red. That shows that they closed lower than where they opened. Candlestick charts, which are generally what we're going to be looking at in the class, I want those to look the same way. A bullish candle, which is a candle that closes higher than where it opened, I want that to be green also, to show me that that was a bullish period, that's a green light that's going up. For a bearish candle, where it closes lower than where it opened, I want that to be red. Now a line chart, which is essentially just going to be one single line that connects either the opening prices or the closing prices, you can kind of customize that. Since it's more of a neutral chart, I'll make that my favorite color, which is blue. Now volumes, because MetaTrader can be used on like futures platforms, they'll often have a volume scale. Since I don't really trust the intraday volume of how it's put out in the Forex market, because if you think about it, it's only really calculated every 3 years. If they do offer volumes on here, I don't want them to be shown, so I'll click on none under that. And your ask line and your stop levels, that's showing you where your stop and profit levels are, as well as your the opening of your trade. I usually like to make those a neutral color also, so I'll make those blue also. And so you can see how it changes my chart over in here to where now it's giving me a nice view. I like the white background. Some of you might like a pink background or whatever you like. It's all up to you. Whatever is the most, that's easiest on your eyes. Now what I also want to do here is under common, when I first pull up my chart, I like my charts to default to candlestick charts. That's what we use the most of in class. So I'll click on candlesticks under the common. So that means that once I create a template, it'll automatically default my charts to candlesticks. You can also, there's a lot of other things that you can have on here. I generally don't have the volume shown. If the grid somehow comes up, I don't want that to be shown also. But you can customize those. Open, high, low, and close. Yes, I do want to see that. This is really all I want on here when I first pull up my charts. So if I click, I have my colors all set up the way I want them. I have them to where they're customized to go to candlesticks. When I click on OK, you'll see that it takes this euro dollar in here and it creates a customized profile. It can a customized color profile for us. What I'll also do is I'll zoom in. If you look at this hourglass in here, if I want to look at the most current prices whenever I pull up this template, let's say I just want to look back for the last like 5 days worth of trading. I'm just going to click on this zoom in button once, and you'll see that it gives me a much clearer picture of what's happening near term in the market. So I have this euro dollar kind of set up the way I want it. It looks good, the colors are good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to go to template. I'm going to go to save template, and I'll just make this NurreFX basic charts. So we'll just put that as NurreFX basic. And click on save, and now that's saved as a template. So I don't have to go through all these other, I don't have to go through in all these other charts and do the same thing over and over again. Like dollar Swiss, if I right click on this, go to template, go down to that NurreFX basic, it'll automatically change it for me. Aussie dollar, right click on it, go to template, NurreFX basic, automatically changes that. And just go through all these and just choose the template I want. And there we go. So now that I have all these up, now I'm looking for approximately the last week or so trading. I'm looking at what the dollar has done, not just versus the euro, but also versus the Swiss, the pound, the yen, the Aussie, New Zealand, and Canadian. The purpose of this is if I want to know what the dollar is doing today or what the prevailing trend is, we also do this to find what we call the driver of the market. This is how we find that driver of what currency is driving either the overall strength of the market or the overall weakness of the market. Now, if you look at all these dollar pairs, it's pretty, if you want to know what's driving the market right now, you look no further than what's happened over the past week on the US dollar. Let's start over here with the euro US dollar pair. As you can see, the euro US dollar, last week it was here, now it's higher. So the exchange rate's higher. So what has the dollar done to the euro versus the euro? Would you say the dollar is strong or weak versus the euro? The dollar is weak versus the euro, correct? It's gone up. The euro dollar exchange rate has gone up. The euro is the base currency, the dollar is the quote currency. Therefore, the euro has gotten stronger and the dollar's gotten weaker. Now look what's happened here to our good friend the dollar Swiss. Started up here, it's gone all the way down here. Well, how's the dollar done versus the Swiss this week or for the past week? Well, the dollar is the base currency on this one. So when this goes down, the dollar is getting weaker and the Swiss is getting stronger. You see the difference? The euro dollar, the dollar is the quote currency. On this one, the dollar is the base currency. So in this one also, the dollar is weak. And so on and so forth. What about the pound dollar? Once again, the dollar is the quote currency on this. Started the week up in here. It's now trading right up in here. Pound has gotten stronger. The dollar has gotten weaker. The yen is not as sharp of a move. If you look at it kind of overall for the last several days, the dollar's definitely gotten weak. This one, if you go right to left, you would almost say if you would just went from the start of the for the past week to where it's trading right now, the dollar went up, went down, and now it's kind of right back where it started from. I would say, you could almost say the dollar, you could say dollar neutral on this. Dollar neutral, maybe slightly weak versus the yen. Remember, the dollar is the base currency versus the yen. Aussie dollar, started the week right down in here. Has come up. That is also dollar weak. Aussie stronger, dollar weaker. Remember, this is why we go over base and quote currency, because if you know what the base is and what the quote is, That's telling you what's happening on the chart. It's telling you how much of the quote currency it's taking to exchange for 1 unit of the base. If we go over in here to New Zealand, same thing. New Zealand has gotten stronger, dollar week. And then last but not least, we got the dollar CAD right down in here. This has gone sharply lower. In this one, though, this is another one, just like dollar Swiss, dollar yen, dollar CAD, the dollar is the base currency. So as this goes down, it's taking less and less Canadian dollars to exchange for $1. So that is also dollar week. So your first goal for technical analysis is just to ask what the trends are. If you were looking at all these charts together and you're asking just the basic question, how has the dollar been performing for the past week or so? Has the dollar been strong or has it been weak? Remember, you just don't look at one pair to do that. If you saw all these charts together, well, it's weak again. It's getting its butt kicked by the euro. It's getting weaker versus the euro. It's weaker versus the Swiss. It's weaker versus the Aussie. It's weaker versus New Zealand. It's weaker versus the CAD. Slightly weaker versus the yen, kind of sideways, and weaker versus the pound. Let's say the dollar was, whether you're a male or a female. Let's say you're sitting in a mall and you're doing the game. My wife does it more than I do, to where they. Her and her sister will kind of judge the men that walk by. They'll rate them on a scale of like 1 to 10. If you're looking at this as the U.S. dollar walking by in the mall and you scored it as let's see, it's weak versus 6 currencies and slightly weak versus, it's basically weak versus all 7 currencies. So it's scoring a 0 right now. It's not strong at all. It's scoring a 0. It's not strong against one single currency out there in the market. That's a pretty ugly currency at this point. So you would say the trend on the dollar is very weak right now over the short term, correct? That's your first step in technical analysis, is just trying to identify what the trends are. And that's called comparison analysis. As we move further into comparison analysis, what we can do is say, okay, well, if the dollar is weak on all these charts, what might be one of the stronger currencies in the market? In that case, we could look at pulling over all the pound pairs. Like, we can change all these charts, by the way, by just clicking and dragging the different charts over. So let's say we wanted to see, okay, well, how strong has what is the strongest currency out there? Well, let's check out the pound. Pound looks pretty strong down in here. It's making some pretty extreme highs. So I can say, okay, how is the pound done versus the euro? I can go over here and say, how is the pound done versus the Aussie? I can click and drag the pound Aussie over onto the Aussie dollar. I can click the pound over to the Canadian dollar. I can go pound Swiss. I can go pound yen. And I can go, let's see, pound New Zealand is somewhere down here. There's pound New Zealand. And now X out of here, now I'm looking at the British pound versus all the individual pairs. The euro is the base, the pound's the quote, so you could say the pound is slightly stronger versus the euro. Definitely it's the pound in here is stronger versus the dollar. Slightly stronger versus the Swiss, stronger versus the yen. You could say it's probably sideways versus the Aussie, weak versus New Zealand, weak versus Canadian. So if that was it's weak versus, it's sideways versus a couple of these. It's strong versus basically 4 of the currency pairs, sideways versus 1, and strong versus, weak versus 2. So in this case, if a person was scoring 4 out of 7 on that scale, you'd say it's slightly attractive. That's slightly strong currency. So you can do this for every currency pair to find out what the drivers are. Not only what's driving overall strength in the market, but what currencies are driving overall weakness in the market over certain periods of time. You can look at it over the long term. You can look at it in the medium term. You can look at it over the short term. We'll go through more on this when we go through comparison analysis. We're going to go into more detail. But congratulations if you have your chart set up like this, because this is your first step into analyzing the Forex market. And we don't have any indicators or any other different bells and whistles on these charts. We're just looking at price to see what price has done in order to establish what we call the prevailing trend. So those were our two subjects we wanted to go through, creating just a basic view of the market, and then also going through and showing you how to change those little properties in your charts to give you a much easier view. Coming up after this, we'll go through in a little bit more detail into what we call comparison analysis on looking at not just the short term, but also medium term, long term trends of the market, as well as money management. So until then, this is Steve Nurre signing off, and thank you for coming into NurreFX.